Televiziunea Română, întâlnirile JTI și Fundația Art Production vă recomandă Garantat 100%.
Wynton Marsalis, hello. Thank you so much for accepting this invitation. It's a privilege to have you here.
All right. Thank you so much, Brother Cătălin. It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure
Brother
sitting
Cătălin.
Talk about it.
Welcome to Romania.
Yes, sir.
It's almost 6 days since you have been here.
Yeah.
How do you find Romania?
Great, man. You know, crossroads of a lot of different places, different types of people, tradition and history. Play with a lot of young people. Great. Hanging with Christy Machalaros,
Yes.
my man. So we're already friends, so it's easy. You know, ate at his home with his family. Beautiful. Great.
What do you think about Romanian musicians?
Man, there's so many great musicians. We heard of some musicians playing in the folk tradition, unbelievable. Play with so much virtuosity and clarity, and of course, being around all the great orchestral musicians and Marin and the youth orchestra musicians. I mean,
Yes.
they're fantastic. Not only can they play technically and know the
You
heritage.
refer to Marin Cazacu.
Yeah, great man, long-term vision.
Yep.
It's impressive, and the musicians have a earthy feeling because they still sing the folk music and have the traditions, and they take a great pride in that. And the young musicians too play with great pride and technical skill and joy.
It's good to hear that.
Yes, true.
If I had the possibility of achieving a superpower in this very moment, I would choose the superpower to make you as comfortable as possible in this moment and participate in this conversation. I know you're very tired. I know you've been traveling a lot. But if you think about your dad, the definition of your dad while he was alive was dignity. When he passed away, his definition remained the same, dignity. What's the main lesson that you have from your father?
You know, my father he was very humble. So I think the thing that I learned from, and I was always with him, so. And he had a struggle. He was not popular or famous. He didn't make money. He had a lot of kids. He had contentious marriage. He had kind of problems everybody had at that time. But he was very humble. And I think even in my last conversation with him, he was humble. I said, man, we're reading this book on Frederick Douglass.
Okay.
And I got to the end of the book, and I always teased my father, because he was very kind of serious, but I was always joking. So no matter what, if he'd be serious, I'd joke with him. So I said, man, you want me to tell you what happens at the end of the book? He said, no, man. So, you know, it's just the necessity to become more humble. He's a very, very humble man.
Did your father, as a musician, did he ever feel any kind of problem with the fact that his sons were famous at a certain moment?
Now, my father didn't care about all of that because he thought it was fake. And he dealt with things.
Please elaborate on that.
My father dealt with things for their intrinsic value. Like, he didn't care whether somebody was known or whether they made money, and he didn't treat people differently. And we knew he didn't. So it wasn't a thing, it was never an issue. To be famous had nothing to do with playing. And my father was very philosophical in a kind of down-home, funny way. But I always say when I left home, I grew up with my father, I was always with him, and I left home at 17, and it was kind of contentious between me and my mother, fought a lot. And it was that time I needed to leave, right? It was so my father gave me a book, and it was Autobiography of a Yogi, Paramahansa Yogananda. So when I saw it was a thick book, I started to laugh. I said, I'm with this guy, I live with him, hung with him. I'm 17, and never a single word about Yogananda, ever. Now I'm leaving, he gives me this book about Yogananda, and it was a well-worn book. Right? And that's how he was. You know, and in that book was more of his philosophical, he was a universal humanist. So even in the 1970s, which in America was the time after the civil rights movement of a great deal of tribalism, my father was always against that. I was always for it, and he was always against it. So he would, I learned a lot just watching him negotiate his space.
How was that particular situation when you were playing together? Because by essence, you're sophisticated musicians. By essence, your dad was straight, simple, fundamental.
Well, he was more sophisticated than us, so we didn't look at it like that. My father actually played with our funk band. I'll never forget. My father told me to play in the funk band. He wasn't elitist, like he didn't, so I didn't want to play in a funk band. I was only 13 because I didn't want to play horn parts with loud electronic instruments. I said, man, your trumpet, you're not going to compete with a bunch of loud people playing. But my father said, no, join the band. You know, I joined the band. And it was a lot of fun socially. It was fun to rehearse and play. We played top 40 music, whatever was popular. Earth, Wind and Fire, Stevie Wonder at that time, black music at that time. Marvin Gaye, James Brown. You know. And my father came once to play at a dance with us. And the guys in the band knew who he was, but not really. Because most of the cats in the band didn't know what playing was. They only knew like what was on pop records. So we said, well, let him play this song by the Crusaders called Keep That Same Old Feeling. Keep That Same Old Feeling has a difficult bridge with harmonies in it that you have to know. So when my father went to come up, we said, well, let him play this song. And the other trumpet player was a partner of mine named Lebo. He said, man, you can't have him play that song because he's not going to be able to play on the middle section, you know. So we said, man, our dad he plays jazz, man. He can hear this stuff. It's not hard for him. And sure enough, one time they played it, my father didn't know it. Then the second time he played through it, but he was playing kind of post-bebop language, which if you didn't grow up, you don't know jazz, you don't know that language exists. So I never forget the second trumpet player looked at me and said, man, what is that he's playing? And he played through all the harmonies, and So my father he was about music, you know. He wasn't about all the kind of labels of sophisticated. And also, but when we played with our father, we played with him. He didn't play with us. It's respect we have to have for him. And I know from playing with musicians around the world who play different styles, if you can provide me an environment where I can play with you, I can. If not, no. You know, if I play with Paco de Lucia and he's gonna play a Bulerias I can't play on, I can't play. You have to give me something that I can find that common ground. So I would never give my father something to play that
was not from his world.
Not so much from his world, but from a world he could figure out.
Some years ago, you said, while being interviewed at 60 Minutes, that at a certain moment you were, and I quote, paranoid about never being able to play good enough.
Right.
End of quotation.
Right.
Do you keep that type of idea?
No, I'm too old for that kind of thought now. I mean, at this point, I've played most of what I'm going to play. So I don't have more time left than I spent. But when I was a teenager, because I always would hear records of people who could play, and in our generation, we weren't really playing. I mean, it's not what we did. So if you could tell the difference between playing and not playing, which most people could not tell the difference. Of my friends or people I grew up with, they had no idea of what playing was. Like I told you, our second trumpet player, he didn't, not second meaning under first, but with two of us, he had never heard a person play. So he thought, man, what is he playing? So with me, I grew up hearing Coltrane and, you know, Duke Ellington and Monk, and most people didn't know about that music. So yes, I always wondered, can you come from a generation of mine where the decay is already setting in?
Yeah.
And can you learn enough to be able to play good enough to compete with what they played? That was the question for the first 12 or 13 years, I think, when I was trying to play. Then when I was like 30, 31, then I wasn't thinking about it so much.
Wynton Marsalis, this is a direct question.
Yeah.
Do you feel good enough now?
I always felt good enough in relation to my generation. But in relation to the history of music, what does good enough mean? Like it's not possible to be good enough. You know, and if you look at the condition of the world, you have to say, even the greatest, was Louis Armstrong good enough? Was Beethoven good enough? Was Bach good enough? When you look at the world we have. So, you know, what does it mean at a certain point to be good enough? You never good enough to do what?
Since we're here, this is a question you've been asked many times. I decided to ask it just to hear the answer of today, which is the 4th of July, 2021. This recording is on the 4th of July,
that's
2021. Is jazz music in its essence an African-American music?
Jazz music in its essence is an American music. So it is the contribution of the invention of it is largely Afro-American, but that makes it more American, not less American.
So the answer is not African-American, but American.
No. It is African-American. It's like, is a Romanian a human being? Yes.
Yep.
So if you take any great Romanian achievement, you pick who you want and you say, well, is this a Romanian? Yes, of course, but Romania is a country in Eastern Europe. So when you say American or you say African-American, African-American is a subculture of America. But jazz is a music that defines America. So because something comes from a subculture, does it not deserve the term? But what is George Gershwin's music? Is it American music? Or is it Anglo-American
universal
music? Well, why is jazz not universal music? It's played all over the world.
Since we're here again, these are your words.
No, good. I like these subjects. I don't have any. You got to remember, man, I fought in my own country for the identity of this music against black and white folks for 40 years. So I don't. This is like bread and butter for me. I'm not afraid of any kind of controversy talking because when you start talking seriously about subjects, the controversy goes down.
I fully agree.
There's no controversy around something serious. The controversy is something personal, something petty, you know. And I mean, I'm not.
Okay, here's this one. These are your words.
Yeah.
When you talk about jazz, it's about sexuality and primitive feeling, end of quotation.
Right, you have to have that in the music. That's a part of the music. Now, great art has that. You can't remove that because there's a scientific. The world is, if you look at the mechanics of we accept that the mechanics, the universe has mechanics and they are mathematical. It's easy for all of us to accept that. We see it, now it's unfolding. However, the magic of choice and what goes on, there's no science to explain that. There's the spiritual, the ephemeral, whatever it is that makes scientific people scoff, that's real. Like no one understands where the depth of a sound comes from or what makes a sound able to touch you. Because we also live in the spirit world. We live in the world of math and mechanics, but what goes on in the context of that grid, that's not. And it has to have some sexuality, it's a primitive quality, because the further back you go in time, the more advanced you become from a spiritual standpoint.
I'll go further. There's a certain very consistent erotic dimension when you talk about jazz.
Yeah.
Is this explicit? Is this implicit? Where do you place it?
It's all of that. It depends on who you are. Every person is different. You can have a great jazz musician who does not have a lot of that, like John Coltrane.
Oh, yeah.
When he plays ballads and sensual songs, they don't even sound like that. They don't have sexuality in them in that way. He was more spiritual and more of a kind of overarching kind of agape type of love for everybody. Now, if you listen to Ben Webster, he was about it. So you can't say, well, jazz has to have this. It can be Ben Webster, it can be John Coltrane, it can be Sidney Bechet, it can be Miles Davis with a deep type of personal sensitivity he would play with, or Clifford Brown with a kind of optimistic, boyish, almost naive sexuality. So or it can be Billie Holiday with a deep kind of profound, searing wisdom. Or you can go on the chitlin circuit with Dinah Washington. You know, it's many expressions in jazz of human sexuality and of human insight, or you can have with Charlie Parker, that kind of.
Will you put Nina Simone on this list?
Nina Simone is not really a jazz musician in that way. Nina Simone is an activist classical musician who uses a rhythm section and writes more like folk popular music. And very powerful, very sensual, but she doesn't lie in the camp of jazz like Billie Holiday and Ella Fitzgerald and Betty Carter. She occupies a space of her own.
Okay, we'll get back to this. Again, your own words, which are fascinating because I think that this is a line that can inspire lots of people. Please explain this. You said, the more refined your concept, the more primitive you have to be.
Yeah. Because the way the laws of opposites work in the world is very interesting. Like I had a conversation today with Christy Machalaru's brother, Marcel. And we were talking about the Tower of Babel.
Yep.
And I always thought of the Tower of Babel was people were punished and they were separated. They were together, but they tried to possess God, so they were punished. He said, no, there was a gift for them to be separated because God can only be known in the diversity. So the diversity actually was a blessing for them. And once again, it's how the opposites work. It's like the blues. It's major, it's minor, it's in 3, it's in 6, it's in 4. And you have to, you can be, I have a mentor of mine, Albert Murray, used to always say, over-refinement can be just as decadent as under-refinement. So it's always a matter of balance. It's like a yoga position, you know. You go one way and you go the other way at the same time. The breathing is exertion and it's relaxation. So, and music and many things in the arts also are always those things.
It doesn't matter that we're on TV. You have your tea here, and
well, you know, these questions are so interesting. I'm not. Well, I stopped thinking about my tea. I'm trying to understand what you're going to tell. What you're telling me, you know.
Do you still iron your own shirts before playing?
I just ironed.
Come on. Is this for real?
Look how crisp my stuff is. I just literally. That's why I'm late. It took me 30 minutes to iron my suit. Yeah, I can't come in front of you and not be right, man. I got to be.
It's
clean.
not a joke. This is.
I'm serious. I just finished ironing. Look, I even ironed my tie. I'm on the road, man. I can't have stuff come out and be like this.
Why do you do that?
Well, it's my ritual, my tradition, and I like to be clean. And I come from people who were poor, man. People that have nothing. They dress up for Sunday. It's important. It means something. Wow. If I go to elementary school to teach a class, I'm gonna be clean. The youngsters, you know, it's a little thing, but to me, the little thing's important. You know, because any of the little things you can always take them away. Then when you take enough of them away, you don't have anything. It's little things like how you dress your mama, what you tell your daddy, the respect you show to older people. Okay, it's easy for all of that to go away. Life is not going to stop because of it. But your traditions determine the level of your civilization. And you give those traditions meaning. You give the meaning to them. Because you can easily, remember the opposites are working all the time. So you can easily look at a tradition and say, man, we don't have to do this. And you don't.
Is it a direct consequence of the fact that you're a very clean man? When you say arts in general are metaphors of our way of being. This is so arts in general are metaphors of our way of being.
Right, it's just a symbolic representation, but it has nothing to do with me. It was like that long before I was born. I mean, my daddy was that. You know, when you take forms like it was the 4th of July, so we're talking about what? Jazz.
Yep.
Jazz, the way it is constructed, we're talking about the universe. There's a grid, it's scientific, it's mathematic, it's harmonies, it's time, there's chord changes, all those things can be calibrated. And then there's a group of people and what they do in the context of that grid. And it's like how our system works. We have the Declaration of Independence was an intention. We're going to do this. That wasn't a democracy. The democracy was the genesis of it was the Virginia Plan. And then the Constitution meant we will do this in this context. And since that time, those who have been trying to avoid the Constitution have successfully avoided it. Those who have been trying to enrich it. And the Constitution is a document that levels the playing field. Now that goes against the history of humankind. Humankind is always the wealth and power will be concentrated in the hands of the most powerful people because we are not equal in capability. Reason, judgment, humanity, these things help to balance that equation. And when these things are not evident, these are all very ephemeral concepts. Yep. It's like truth and integrity. When these things are not in place, man, then corruption runs wild regardless of system.
We'll get back to corruption as well.
But that's what I got onto metaphor, but that's what I mean by jazz.
Yep.
It is a metaphor. So if you look at the jazz bandstand, 6 musicians standing with monitors asking for themselves and they're playing fortissimo, playing long, boring solos, only playing a little bit of melody material, long solos, and it's the type of, you can sink down into a self-indulgence. It's hard to temper and control and restrain yourself.
Will you participate in a discursive exercise now?
Yes.
Let me tell you.
Sure.
I'll give you 3 words. Improvisation, swing, and free. Do these 3 words match together?
2 of them match together.
Which one?
Improvisation
and swing.
And free.
Why not
free.
swing?
No, because swing is restraint. Swing means me and you. That's not free. Swing is the bass at the bottom playing soft and the drums at the top and 6 playing loud. The low bass at the bottom frequency, the cymbal at the very highest frequency. It means I want to play 8 choruses of my solo, but it's going to drag the band, so I'm going to play 2. It means you're rushing to me and this person is dragging, but I'm going to find a medium ground so that we start to groove with each other. Swing means I'm going to make decisions that you think are intelligent, not that I think is. So swing is the governor. It pulls you back. It defines, it's like what the essence of diversity is. Diversity helps you to know yourself by you knowing your limitation.
Is free compatible with the word avant-garde?
Avant-garde is a military concept.
Let's accept it in arts.
Well, the question of avant-garde in arts has a problem because can a thing be avant-garde forever? Like, can something be avant-garde in 1908? It's still avant-garde in 2021? It's like nobody really knows what avant-garde means. It's a term we use like postmodern. We don't know what it means, really.
But do we know what decadence means?
Yeah, we know what it means. It means that the balance of things are out of proportion. That's what decadence is. Like if I take this tea and I put four spoons of sugar in it, it's going to taste better if I like sugar. So I'd be like, damn, man, you have the tea and that's decadence. Or decadence could also be extreme asceticism. It could also be going in the opposite direction. I only want to eat a raw vegetable and so no cooking of food or no.
Let me ask you this. Miles Davis, his various explorations, is that about decadence?
Yes, after 1980 something, yeah, definitely. In the 70s, yes. The whole of American culture went in that direction. And it's clear to anyone who looks at it. Not only is it decadent, it's actually become decadent to the point of absurdity. And it's there for everyone to see. But it's like we're in a time of the emperor has no clothes.
Yep.
People using the type of language they use, referring to other human beings in the worst type of fashion, looking a certain way, celebrating gangsterism, killing people, being a fan of going to jail, disrespecting people in your neighborhood, in your community.
And we have a background sound with an ambulance.
Well, that makes it more authentic and real. Yeah, we're in a period of great decadence, but it doesn't mean that to give up or to accede because a majority of people accept that. It's hard to stand alone, and sometimes you're forced to do that.
Wynton Marsalis, very directly, you keep in mind the fact that at a certain moment, Miles Davis said, Wynton doesn't know what he's talking about. He should keep his mouth shut. End of quotation. Herbie Hancock, in a very friendly dialogue with you, said, no, Wynton, you're not right. You don't know what's that about.
Right.
What would you answer today, now on the 4th of July, 2021?
Here's what I would answer. Get their records that they've made since 1982 and 83, when I was 21 and 22, and what their achievements are aesthetically from that time, and get mine and put them and stack them up. And you answer the question yourself. That's what I have to say about that.
Okay.
You answer it. You get their records in mind from this time that they were telling me what to do. And you lay it all out and say, well, okay. And you make your own mind up. That's a good enough answer for me.
Okay. Let's think about classical and jazz. Let's think to something very precise. Let's take an example, which could be maybe the second Brandenburg Concerto by Johann Sebastian Bach. How hard is to play that? And I'm not referring to the traumatic dimension of hard,
Right.
but I'm referring to the difficult physical dimension of playing Bach. When you compare this to playing jazz, because lots of people would say, well, it's a joke, it's easy to play jazz.
Once again, play jazz like who? Is it easy to play like Dizzy Gillespie? Man, come on. Once again, you get the records yourself. And you make your own judgment. Who are you gonna play like? Louis Armstrong? You'll never play like him. So people have struggled with the Brandenburg and played it. But the question of the Brandenburg is, what about writing the Brandenburg? It's not about playing it. You're not gonna find plenty of people in jazz who wrote that. Man, that's a great achievement, the composition of it. Let's not forget about playing it. Playing is difficult. And I also have a recording that I played too loud on of that. I could have played much better on that recording. It was just too loud. And it's a difficult piece, but you can't, the part is written, you're gonna play it. You can't compare that to a part that somebody is making up. And but once again, who's playing? These are very personal things, and many jazz is a you give me a specific piece written by a man and compare it to a whole genre of music with any one piece is a bunch of people playing. So it's not really, if anything, in jazz, King Oliver's Creole Jazz Band's recordings of 1923 have more in common with the Brandenburg Concerti if you just listen to them sonically, because everybody's making up a contrapuntal. They play with a thick polyphony that is reminiscent of the Brandenburg, and I think the great soprano saxophonist Bob Wilbur actually made some recordings to show that the similarity of those two styles.
I'm not asking for a percentage in this, but if you think of Johann Sebastian Bach, how much Bach is in your DNA?
I mean, anybody in Western music has not just him, but what was before him. Because if you play Western music, you have scales, chords, harmonies. That's what he had.
I used bar as a metaphor for classical, as a matter of fact.
Well, you know, you're in the Western tradition, so a lot of it is in there. Now, of course, you're also in the African diaspora. So from a rhythmic standpoint and from a pentatonic standpoint and a call and response and also a worldview standpoint, you're also in that diaspora. The question for you is, how much do you know of those traditions?
I was referring to an achieved DNA, not a born DNA.
No, that's achieved. I studied with a great Ghanaian master, Yakub Adi, and he taught me many things about the music, and I wanted to know those things. So their practice and their mysticism and their concept of playing in 2 times at once is very complicated. And it's in all music. It's in box music. It's in all the 12/8 music. And all the early dances, when you hear them playing a 3 against 4, the kind of hemiola pattern, all that comes from that overarching concept, which is not just a single thing, it's a worldview. For a Western musician, it's very difficult to play in the time of 4 and hear in the time of 3. Billie Holiday was able to do this better than probably most of the jazz musicians. But if you listen to Afro-Latin jazz, well, they're in between the two. So when you listen to Machito, Chico Farrell, all the great, we have a musician with us, Carlos Enriquez, who exists in that world. And he also has taught me a lot about how to hear in the various claves. And if you listen to any Afro-Cuban jazz, you know, you hear that. So there are complexities on all sides, but we do have we have foundations in all of these styles.
Let's have a turn in our conversation now.
Sure.
You grew up in a time when segregation was obscene.
Yes.
There were places for white people, places for black people.
Yes.
I'm asking a very personal question, not the musician, not the famous person. I'm asking you, as an individual.
Sure.
Do you feel any, how shall I call it, deep need to be vindictive under any form, in any possible form?
Vindictive against who?
Let me think. Vindictive against me, for example, as a white person.
You're not a white, you're Romanian. You don't have anything to do with that.
Vindictive towards a white American.
Okay. Man, when Martin Luther King died, I had to go to white school. Okay, several things happened. First, I was always the smartest in my class. First. So my feeling about it was, we didn't think that because we lived in a certain type of world. I said, man, okay, I'm the smartest in the class. But I also didn't like people talking to me a certain way, treating me a certain way. So I said, okay, every time you address me with a certain word, one of us is going to get our ass whipped. And you know, it wasn't a movie. So many times I had to receive what was there. And it was not free. Okay. Man, maybe 2 years into that, the biggest guy in the class was a German, but most of the kids were Italian. He said, man, you gonna fight everybody? I said, if they call me what I don't want to be called, yeah. He said, the next time they do that, I'm gonna jump in. Then I thought, damn, I gotta fight you too? I'm not.
That was fighting literally.
Yeah, I mean, that's what we did. I said, damn, I gotta fight you? And I mean, when I say fighting, you was getting your ass whipped. It wasn't like fighting for fun.
Oh, yeah?
Okay, you was going home looking different. I said, I gotta fight you too, man. I'm gonna handle this big guy. And he said, no, I'm gonna fight with you. Damn, the next time.
On your side.
The next time, damn, what if he didn't jump in with me? Now, how do I feel toward him?
Wow.
He's white.
Yeah, but he's German.
Well, okay, my trumpet teacher in high school was white. How do I feel about him? How do I feel about him? The history of the world is full of people who take advantage when they can take advantage. And they're victimized when they can't take advantage. I'm too old to spend my life thinking about, you know, I got to get back at white folks. And you know, you had a hard time when I was growing up, and every place you stood, you had a hard time in your family. You had a hard time in your black neighborhood. You had a hard time. When you met white folks, they was getting what was left. And all the stuff the world entertains themselves with now that they find funny, gangster this and that, who they killing and shooting. Who are they killing and shooting? Who are they robbing? They're in their own neighborhood. You don't think those people are having a hard time with that? Everybody thinks it's entertainment and fun. If you're in that neighborhood, it's not fun.
That's for sure.
It's not fun for you. And now it's celebrated. So, you know, I'm from the neighborhood, man, from the community. You understand what I'm saying? So it wasn't like you was having a picnic. But okay, a lot of people don't have picnics all in the world. Our pathology is not any worse than a lot is made of it. A lot of money is made off of it. But a lot of that is just absolute bullshit.
You were talking about being exploited, and I will also use a quotation from yourself, which is, when you play music, your consciousness is projected into the sound.
Yes.
And if audiences are not trained to hear that, they're more susceptible to be exploited.
Oh, definitely.
Please explain that.
Well, you know, I'm going to go back to what I was talking with Christy's brother about. Today we're talking about the Bible, how, and once again, it wasn't in a religious context.
Okay.
You know, it was in the context of the information, which is that a lot of the book is about you developing wisdom and acuity and being able to discern. Once again, the empress, you have the one on the one hand, the empress has no clothes and nobody wants to say it. And on the other hand, you have, you know, the whole wisdom of Solomon, like, well, whose baby is this?
Yep.
And with the kind of rise of a very cheap populism, it's difficult many times to discern the difference between one thing or the other thing. And many times I'm speaking to that. You know, and in music, it's a good way to disguise a message because it's so ephemeral and it's so, do I know what you're thinking? Do I know can I feel your heart? If I'm really acute, I can understand when you're telling me, but if you're a really good actor, man, I don't know. And people are being hustled all over the world.
Yep.
Now they're being hustled en masse with the selling of people's information by large corporations, by the studying of trends, and all of these things that are used to manipulate masses of people and herd people like cattle. There are two basic mythologies at work in the world, and music is a part of both. One is masters and slaves. There's a small group of masters, and there's a lot of y'all who's going to be slaves. Oh, yeah. Okay? And the other is a symbiotic kind of mutual development. There's a give and a take, and it requires sacrifice on the sacrifice on the part of the strongest in whatever, the intellectually strongest, the financially strongest. It's kind of a constant position of sacrifice that's required to attain a certain type of humanity that goes against the survival of the fittest law of nature and the natural laws of competition. And it takes a certain thing to negotiate that. And music is important in both of those. Because music can be a part of sloganeering and selling trash and bullshit to you. Or music can be a part of raising your consciousness, making you understand things. And it's much easier to produce a lot of that which will exploit because it takes less than that which will elevate, because it takes a certain adherence to values and an integrity that is most often not rewarded at all.
I kindly ask you to make this very clear for a Romanian audience.
Yes.
Do they have to be technically prepared in order to listen to jazz?
No. You have to be emotionally and spiritually prepared to listen to any music. And you can be that just by asking, what is this music saying to me? It's like you would do with a person. What is this person actually telling me? And I have a thing that I would always read to my daughter, Aesop's fable, where the fox is talking to the crow. The crow has some cheese in her mouth. And that is the most beautiful singing voice. That's the most, I've never heard anything so gorgeous. Could you please just sing one more song for me, louder? And the crow opens her mouth and the cheese falls out. And the fox grabs the cheese and says, that's some of the worst singing I ever heard in my life. Beware of flatterers. Like, so, you know, what am I actually being told? The beginning of every hustle is that you're going to get something and you're not going to have to work for this. And I'm going to be the one who's going to help you with this.
You do not exactly appreciate hip-hop, rap.
How can you? How could a guy like me appreciate people calling people the N-word, calling women the words they do? How am I appreciate that? Celebrating gangsterism, killing brothers, talking bad about other black people, insulting them all the time, using them for fodder, insulting the black man, celebrating going to jail. How could I do that and be a man? How could I do it? How could I come from my father and all of his struggles and disrespect him by saying, yeah, I love that, I agree with that?
What would you say if someone will have this type of argument? Hip hop and rap are contemporary reflections of the very old art of poetry.
They are. They are poetic. You ever see any of the literature around fascism? You know what the Nazis did with the New Order? You know, y'all just had the revolution here in 1989. Mm-hmm. Now, what about the political battle after the revolution? What about all the hustling that went on in that, and lying and bullshitting? It's the same all over the world all the time. Hey, the South lost the Civil War, but they won the political battle. And that battle still goes on.
Oh, yeah.
What would I say if somebody told me there was some statesmen from the South? Yeah, there were statesmen. There were some great generals on the Confederate side. Yes, there were. Some great music came out of it. Yes, it did. Mm-hmm. But so what? It was for this cause.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter how great all of that is. This is the cause of it. There's a cause right now that y'all are fighting for. I'm not qualified to speak on it because I don't know, but I know it's there.
That's my next question. Very honestly, do you feel like an activist, like a militant, in any way?
No. I don't. I'm an artist. Like, I don't. Activists, militants, their lives are on the line. My life has not been on the line. I'm an artist. I'm not a politician. Politicians' lives are on the line. They also need a constituent. I don't need that. I'm an artist. I've been fortunate to have the opportunity to work and to play and to speak freely, and I've done that. How would I do if I didn't have that opportunity? I would like to think I would stand up to it and be courageous like people have done in the past who could not speak. You know, one of my favorite things to read in high school was the Gulag Archipelago.
Yes.
Okay, this man, you know, look at what Shostakovich dealt with. I could find other examples. I've been blessed to not have to be in that line. So for me to insinuate myself into that, it'd be naive. You know, yeah, I grew up in a hard circumstance, and I understand it.
That's why I'm asking.
You can get your behind whipped for your opinion, but you can get that from your own group. The hardest group to tame many times is your own tribe. And if you don't want to be tribal with them, you're not a part of the gang, man. You can suffer. With me, I've been able to get by. I don't know. I don't know why. I've kept my opinions. I say what I want in all kinds of forums. I tend not to make it personal.
Yep.
Like, you had to go back to the 80s to get Miles Davis and Herbie Hancock. I stopped talking about people personally in the mid-90s because it's a waste of time, and it puts the focus on you and them.
Yep.
And they're not the focus. So when I talk about hip hop or rap, I always speak culturally. Rock, all of it is connected in a certain way. I don't speak about individual people because the impact is not individuals having impact. It's a larger cultural implication.
Is the world of today tribal, more tribal than before?
No, I think the world of today is less. That's why there's so much more conflict.
So being tribal would be better.
It would be less stressful. It's like if I beat you and you follow what I tell you to do, there's no stress. But
that's not so complicated.
If I don't beat you and I can beat you and I say, well, what do you think? And you don't think what I think, then I have to either make space for you and for what you think and sacrifice some of what I believe for you to be a part, given you have some level of, of engagement with a subject, or I have to beat you. So I may think, hey, I don't want to be tribal. Let me invite you in, but all of a sudden, I'm not interested in what you're saying. Cătălin was okay, but I'm not interested in what he's saying now. I thought I could live with you, but I have to beat you because I really realize I can beat you, and I don't need the stress of you. Then that battle is played out in homes all over the world.
Yeah, that's
between
right.
a man and a woman.
Fully right.
and a man and his significant
Yep.
other, it's played out all the time. Can we get along? Can we share space?
Let's hope so.
Well, you know, we're doing better than we used to do.
Let's hope so. Wynton Marsalis, it's been a huge privilege to have you as a guest.
Man.
Thank you so much, and looking forward to meeting you again.
Hey.
Looking forward to hearing to your music,
sir.
to listening
Thank
to
you.
your music, and thank you for your music.
Thank
you
you.
for your words.
Thank you so much, man. It's been a privilege and a pleasure. And thank you for just all the research and stuff you did and the great questions. It's an honor.
Thank you so much.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Definitely. Brother.
Le mulțumesc enorm colegilor de la Jazz FM, colegilor de la HDV Studio, colegilor de la Play. E greu să zici la revedere într-o situație din asta, dar mulțumim frumos. Noapte bună!